Hey Ghost! Remember when cupcakes were trendy, and then avocados were trendy, and then donuts were trendy? Well, now we're eating the rich. Yum! For the past few years, film and television across the globe have been punishing the rich. And I want to dive into this phenomenon. Why now? Why should the rich be punished? Why am I enjoying it so much? As you all know, we live in a society. Most of the globe runs on a system where you, but not you watching this video, can go out, make some bucks and grow your wealth, and eventually other people will be working for you so you don't have to go out and earn the bucks anymore. Don't worry, those people could do the same thing if they wanted to, they just choose to be buck makers. And it's good that we have the rich people and the poor people in their place, right? It motivates these guys to try harder. Plus, there's not room for everyone at the top. If you think I'm bitter because I'm not at the top of the pyramid, I can tell you, I was once on that journey, and it involves some exploitation that I am just not comfortable with. It's a choice to put other people in disparaging situations in order to benefit yourself. Plus, my real passion is editing and animation. Anyway, this is the backdrop to our lives. This is what we're all born into and die for. It used to be that rich versus poor storylines focused on, sure, being rich is great and all, but you can't buy happiness. In fact, Stoics in the 3rd century followed a philosophy that believed anyone truly seizing life and being virtuous would be emotionally resilient to misfortune. I take this to mean appreciate what you do have. Be at peace with the world around you. You do you. Fast forward 1600 years and we were still dealing with the same issues of inequality. In Charles Dickens' 1843 story, A Christmas Carol, Scrooge's drive to hoard every penny he can makes him an unbearably unempathetic and cruel character. And over the course of the story, he realises that he missed out on the real riches of life. Fun! In the end, he becomes generous with his money and behaves more caringly towards others. And I read up on why Charles Dickens wrote this story. Was it to uplift the spirits of the poor and make them feel like their lives were more valuable than they thought? Or was it to warn the rich that they are uncaring, exploitative beasts who will be chained down in the afterlife by their sins? And it turns out it was the latter. Go Dickens! Dickens realised the most effective way to reach the broadest segment of the population with his social concerns about poverty and injustice was to write a deeply felt Christmas narrative. And other novels of this time also touched on the lively warmth of the working class and the lonely isolation of the rich. Over the 20th century, as the amount of rich and poor people both increased, we saw more and more narratives reminding poor people of what they have. And in my childhood, I remember a lot of media exploring this through the trope of poor person in a rich person's world. In The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, well, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that this is a story all about how I loved this show when I was growing up, and I realise now how it dealt with social issues in a really interesting way. It's not just the money itself that separates rich from poor, but the opportunities and lifestyle, and I guess music taste? The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a window into wealth with morality. Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv were once poor and are now rich, so they kept a sense of humility and groundedness. But their children, who grew up rich, had a lack of awareness, which was played for laughs. And then on top of that, the Banks family and Will faced discrimination because of their race, proving that not even wealth will protect you from the broken system of oppression. Keeping it in the 90s, another example of sympathy for the devil, rich, is the lazily named Richie Rich. This is a kid's movie, I know, but if you're gonna make a film that makes you sympathise with a rich kid, in fact, if you make a film at all, you really need to think about what message you're sending that children are gonna take into adult life. In fact, what adults are gonna learn here and take into the wild world. Anyway, Richie Rich asks the viewer to feel sorry for a child who has a McDonald's in his mansion? Feel sorry for the richest kid on earth because he doesn't have any friends. In the film, other rich kids are naturally insufferable by being money-oriented at the age of 12. And the street kids, who he literally finds on the street, don't want to be friends with someone that they don't relate to. What I think is interesting here is that the street kids make fun of Richie's riches. But they're not making a statement about hoarding wealth or anything. It's more like they think being rich is soft and weak and being street is tough and cool. I hadn't really thought of this before, but another angle of the rich versus poor argument is that rich people don't really do hard work and poor people have more to be proud of. which is a whole other debate, but I just realised I hadn't really thought about this trope in media for a long time.
Get your ass up and work.
This film wants you to think of Richie and his parents as something of an anomaly in the rich world because they have values not expected of the rich. Some people have morals because of their connection to good people, also known as the poor. This narrative of poor equals virtuous and rich equals miserable is everywhere. The amount of endings that see people throwing away fortunes in pursuit of what really matters is staggering. But these films never address the real issue. It's not about who gets rich, it's about how gets rich. That doesn't make grammatical sense. About how you get rich. That's the issue. So how did it come to this? The term eat the rich comes from Genevan philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The original quotation was, Quand le peuple n'aura plus rien à manger, il mangera les riches. When the people shall have no more to eat, they will eat the rich. There's more of us than them. And this brings us to now. We're seeing the thinly veiled morality of being rich drop. Parasite, Knives Out, Squid Game, The White Lotus, The Glass Onion, The Menu, the whole of IMDb. Not really, just those ones and some others. They are all tapping into a new portrayal of rich versus poor. In 2019, South Korean drama Parasite won the Oscar for Best Picture. The film followed a struggling family who seized the opportunity to benefit from a rich family. And it asks the question, who is the parasite? The poor family do everything they can. They started a business and it failed. They take on as much work as they can. They're educated, they're multi-skilled, and still they struggle to live. And the rich family are not seen to struggle in this way at all. Sure, they have their own issues, but nowhere near the struggle for survival that the poor go through. And the film doesn't position that the poor have each other, have character, have fun, and that's valuable. Because the rich also have each other. And they actually have more time to have fun. So who's the real drain in society here? The people trying to survive, or the people hoarding wealth? Squid Game took things a step further by reimagining capitalism as a game. It took all the elements of using others' strengths to benefit yourself, exploiting innocent people, and there only being one place at the top, to the extreme. If you're wondering if you would survive Squid Game, you only need to look at your circumstances right now to find out. I'd be a deserter. Knives Out brought us a fabulously fun spin in the wealth gap through a murder mystery. The people who were chasing the money and the power that came with it were willing to throw anybody under the bus to get their hands on it. It drove home this idea that the morally good rich person is a facade. But mama, do they look good in sweaters. Daniel Craig's wonderfully indulgent private investigator returned last year in The Glass Onion. And this time, the rich didn't disguise themselves as virtuous. And I think this is a key shift in the conversation about the rich. These characters believed they were entitled to what they had, or in fact deserved more. As I often quote, art imitates life and life imitates art. Many of the characters' behaviours were inspired by the way real wealthy celebrities behaved during the modern plague. At the end of last year, the conversation around Nepo Babies took off thanks to an article by Vulture. If you don't know what a Nepo baby is, it's short for a nepotism baby. Nepotism is when you get someone into a field of work because you are related to them. And this entire conversation is around famous people out there who got where they are because of their famous parents. And no matter what way you look at this conversation, if you're born into wealth and recognition, so your parents are famous or well known in their industry, you have a leg up. Yes, you'll also have to work, but not as hard as somebody with no connections and no name to drop. If we decided that it was mandatory to blind hire, so you read a CV without seeing the name, the age, or anything about the person's identity, a Nepo baby will still stand out because they'll have trained with the best in the industry, whether that is their parent or whether it's a connection of their parents. A Nepo baby will have the best experience on their resume. They still have better opportunities than people starting at zero. And it cements this feeling that actually reaching the top is completely unachievable for the vast majority of people. So you can understand why people are fed up of hearing, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you can make it if you try. I saw a lot of buzz about The Menu, a film that invites us into the world of fine dining. Incidentally, shortly after the film was released, the world's best restaurant, Noma, announced it was closing, claiming that fine dining was unsustainable. One of the founders said, financially and emotionally, as an employer and as a human being, it just doesn't work. And I have to admit, that's honest. And the menu dives into this world of pointless prestige. The film admits that the whole fine dining experience takes the fun out of eating. So why bother? What's the point in being rich if you can't enjoy the simple things like food? It suggests that being rich isn't the crime, it's the punishment. The menu exposes each guest for their crimes and makes fun of how they walked into their own trap. Throughout the film, I did not know what was going to happen next, which is really refreshing. And the menu comes the closest to the prophecy metaphor of eating the rich. But I can assure you that no rich people are truly eaten, I think. Lastly, I recently finished watching both seasons of The White Lotus, which I thoroughly recommend. The dynamics between the guests in the hotels and the workers in and around the hotels is fascinating. The show hits on entitlement, privilege, power dynamics, and the lack of self-awareness in the rich. And this premium Emmy and Golden Globe winning show is aimed at the rich. It's not a comfort show, it's not an easy background watch, and it's not free. This is asking the type of people who would stay in this resort or identify with some of the characters to examine themselves. I'm not rich. My overdraft will vouch for that. But I saw some of the privilege I have be challenged in this series. And it made you root for some of the rich characters in a sort of please have a breakthrough and get it kind of way. I wanted to see Tanya finally do something good with her wealth and stop being self-centered. I wanted to see Olivia have some compassion for others and stop making every situation about her. And it was kind of funny to see the De Grassos be shooed away from the Italian family home because these people, whose language they didn't even bother to learn, owe them nothing. For me, the reason that media is exploring the wealth gap right now is because it's wider than ever. The old message of, so you're not rich, but you have friends and family and charm, and that goes a long way. And hey, you never know, maybe one day you will be rich and you'll still have all those things. We see right through it. I think we're going to see more rich people punished for their sins in media, but I don't know what impact it's going to have on the world. Until someone plucks up the courage to give us all universal basic income or come up with another idea, we're all trapped in the system. But what do you think about this trend? Do you think it's fair to be picking on the rich? Let me know in the comments. And if you're rich, throw a super thanks my way. You can afford it. See you next time.